So we were speaking about two different types of Beinonis, if you recall. The Beinoni is the human being who's able to fully control his animal soul, but not uh, remove it or not transform it. The animal soul still appears in his thoughts from time to time, and the temptations of the animal soul seep in, but he's able to immediately push them out. That's the Beinoni, someone who's in full control and that has his divine soul really in the driver's seat. So we were speaking that there are really two levels within the Beinoni. One is people who do good because that's their nature. And maybe they don't have the struggles that the other type of Beinoni has. The struggles that for the other type of the Beinoni of the Beinoni struggles that are really very much alive within that other type. That for that type, it's very hard for him to overcome his animal soul or parts of his animal soul. But we were also saying that someone who goes against his nature to serve God is someone who also has a deeper connection with God because he's choosing to connect with God, as opposed to that other person could just be his nature. Remember, we were saying, we brought the example of Abraham, who was only called God-fearing after he went against his nature. And in many ways, we should all have aspects, as we were saying, of going against our nature to serve God in every day. We should have built-in moments like this in which we say, okay, my nature maybe is to be stingy, so let me be charitable today during this moment. Or my nature is to be lazy, let me be a little more uh, enthusiastic and passionate. Anyway, because that at the end of the day is really what proves the connection that we have with God and what solidifies it. Okay, so that was the idea. Let's continue where we left off, as you mentioned, Margaret, at the bottom of page 49. Second paragraph from the bottom. Thus, for example, does anyone want to read?
I'll read if nobody else wants to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Go for
Thus,
it.
for example, is the case of one who is by nature an assiduous student because he is organically so disposed. There
Right.
are people who by nature physically as well as spiritually tend toward melancholy. A tempestuous life, whether of holiness or of impurity, holds no attraction for them. Contentment lies in quiet continuity. If they have an intellectual bent or if matters of the spirit interest them, then the coziest means for self-realization is to sit and study. The latter requires no self-sacrifice. It is the self-expression of a bookworm. Such an individual devotes every spare moment to Torah study. There is no contest between a godly soul and an animal soul. This is his animal soul. We could reasonably expect that, intellectual though he may be, he might have to struggle with his disposition in another plane, namely sexual desire.
Right. And he's just continued that, and he's likewise free.
And likewise free from conflict with regard to sexual desire by reason of his frigid nature. And similarly, with the other mundane pleasures wherein he naturally lacks any feeling of enjoyment.
Right. And in many ways, this person is really connected more to himself than he is to God because he's connecting to his nature. What proves our real connection with God and us becoming that channel for God when we go against our nature, as we mentioned? As long as I'm doing that which I was born to do, then fine. When I when I was born and when I die, I'm more or less the same person. What causes me to truly progress in life and grow in life? Going against my nature. It's almost like anything that grows, trees that grow, even children that grow. In order to truly grow, you have to go against your nature. Otherwise, you don't grow. Uh, I know fish, it's lobsters, that's how they grow. They have to push themselves to the limits, go against the nature, face the uncomfortable. And then they grow. And it's true with our relationship with God. Our relationship with God can only grow if we go against that nature. So if your nature is to study, like this example here, then okay, great. You could be studying Torah all day long, but Rabbi Steinsaltz says, then this is his animal soul. It's his animal soul studying. It's not his godly soul studying. His godly soul wants you to go against your nature. So do something that's against your nature, and then you will have grown. And that really is the biggest test for that second type of Benoni. You might be a tzaddik, but really you're not because you haven't changed. You are the same person as you were more or less when you were born. Now, I just want to add, it reminds me, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev, because we often compare ourselves. We live, as people have said before, in an age of comparison, a comparative age, where, oh, I wish I could be like this person, and look how good this person is. You never know what goes inside the makeshift of a person's nature, because maybe someone seems so good because that's his nature. But you, to be that good, it takes you tremendous effort. But on the other hand, if you make that effort, even just temporarily, you may achieve a higher level than this person is on, because after all, he's just being led by his animal soul, by his natural soul, his natural self. And I remember that Rabbi Steindals would often tell the story of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev, one of the great Hasidic masters, who was once approached by a student who said, the student came to Rabbi Levi Yitzchak and said, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, you won't believe what happened. One of your students, who's about 70 years old, left Judaism, and he became a complete hypocrite, and he was so devout before. And Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev always looked at the good in everyone. Responded to the student, he said, well, wow, I'm jealous of his strength. It took 70 years for the evil inclination to finally overcome this person. Imagine how much strength he had for 70 years. And in many ways, so for 7 years, this guy may seem now like a hypocrite because he left everything. But on the other hand, look, he actually went against his nature for 70 years.
Yeah.
And that in of itself might have elevated him to a higher level than this student who's complaining about him. Because maybe for him it's easier. So every time really we go against our nature for God, we elevate ourselves and we grow. Otherwise, we remain the same person. And Rabbi Stein says harsh words here. There is no contest here between the godly soul and animal soul. This is his animal soul. That's the example of the goat from last week. But differentiates us and human beings and animals, is that human beings can grow in that way. Animals can't. They really just are led by their nature. They can't really grow. Even circus animals are trained. It's okay. At the end of the day, they're animals. But we can truly elevate ourselves on a higher level than animals only if we go against that nature. So that is really the point here. But again, this should be a dialogue much more than a monologue. So feel free to share any disagreements or comments, anything that comes to mind. Otherwise, we can continue. Okay, so let's continue. The capacity.
Okay. The capacity for sexual pleasure differs from one person to the next, and a lack of sensuality and absence of pleasure in eating or drinking is no indication of spiritual achievement. Someone may not pay any attention to what he eats or what he sees. So too is sexual desire. Such an individual can sit in a study hall and be occupied with the performance of the commandments while the world around him presents no temptation. He gets dressed every morning, has his breakfast, and goes about his business. His single-minded focus on Torah study is not from a magnetic attraction to holiness. He is disinclined by nature to do anything else. He could be a clerk, a professor, or a rabbi, any of these with no change in his disposition. A Benoni like this would only seem to be the height of perfection.
Right. Just going back to an anecdote that comes to mind. I have a good friend who's a big lecturer, and that's really his main focus. Years ago, he came to Rabbi Steindl for advice as he was starting his lecturing career. And Rabbi Steinsaltz gave him a few pieces of advice that have stayed with him ever since. He shared with me this. And he said that one of the pieces of advice was when Rabbi Steinsaltz told him, look, I hear that from my wife, that's how Rabbi Steinsaltz would give compliments. It was always a backhand compliment. It was never a direct compliment. I hear from my wife that you're pretty good, he tells him. And I'm sure that after 30 years, you'll be so good that they'll invite you to lecture somewhere. And just before you go on stage, you'll be reminded by your helper what the title is, and you'll be able to, even though you just learned what the title of the lecture is just before you got on stage, you'll be able to speak beautifully about the title for an hour or two, however long they'll ask you. And then you'll go back to your hotel room. You'll wake up in the morning and you'll look at yourself in the mirror, and all you'll see is a mouthpiece moving. And Rabbi Steinsaltz tells him, and then you'll know that you're officially dead in this very harsh way. But the point was that, okay, so you'll be a lecturer for 30 days. That's your nature. You're good at it. But if you're not going to really go against your nature to grow, to truly improve yourself, and after 30 days, you'll see a mouthpiece moving. Then you'll be dead. You'll be just as not alive, at least, as when you started life altogether. So make sure to always grow. Make sure to always study. Make sure to always improve yourself. It takes effort. It's true bodily, in a bodily way. If you wanna grow your body, you gotta go to the gym. There's no other way about it. Or you gotta exercise. You gotta stretch. You gotta push your limits. Otherwise, your body won't grow. Same with the soul. And if you don't do that, then you could be a clerk, a professor, a rabbi, but there's no real relationship with God. That's really that. And by the way, this is very much connected to Passover, if I may say, because the only way we achieved freedom is when we went against our nature. We spoke about this a little bit last week, but it's interesting because it's not just before we left Egypt, when God asked us to do something against our nature by taking that sheep, which was the god of the Egyptians, and sacrificing it to our own risk. We really had to face many risks by taking that sheep. But it was also after the grand exodus from Egypt. For 40 years, God is grooming us to go against our nature. We had a slave mentality, and each time God gives us tests to break it by going against our slave nature that we unfortunately, inherited in Egypt from previous generation of slaves. From previous generation of slaves, we were there for 210 years. So for 40 years, God grooms us to go against our nature. And then we deserve the promised land. And it's true naturally, but it's certainly true individually. To reach the promised land, we have to go against our nature each time, grow and grow and grow. And then we can reach somewhat of a level of promised land. It's not that the work ends then, continues on then, but at least we will have become free. But freedom is earned. It's not, and it's earned through going against our nature. It's not just a gift that's given to us and it happens automatically. So that's very much the idea of Passover too. The Talmud says it's an interesting line because and the Tanya, by the way, quotes it much later on, but it says that back in the day, if you would want to go just 1 mile with a donkey, they would charge you 1 coin, 1 zuz. But if you want to go 1 mile and 1 yard, they would charge you 2 zuz, 2 coins. Now, it doesn't make sense because, charge 2 coins for 2 miles, 1 mile, 1 coin, 2 miles, 2 coins, but yeah, 1 mile, 1 yard. And they would tell you in the marketplace, that's because the nature of the donkey is to go 1 mile. So it's just 1 coin. The minute you break that 1 mile and you add 1 yard to his journey, you've broken his nature. That demands tremendous effort from the donkey. So then they charge you 2 coins. And from that, the Talmud derives that Eino shone pilko mea pa'amim, לשונה פלקו 101 פעמים, which is a very powerful line, that one who studies a specific part of the Torah, whatever part it may be, 100 times, is unlike the person who studies that specific part 101 times. Why? Because again, if you studied 100 times, at least back in the day, people had much more patience and focus than we may have today. So if you studied 100 times, okay, so it's part of the way people study. It's part of a natural course of studying. But if you go above your limit 101 times, it's not 200 times, 101 times, you've broken that limit, then you're on a high level already. So everyone has that, everyone knows for themselves what that 101th time looks like. And everyone knows in what department they need that 101th breaking. In Italian, they call it punte di nesta, if anyone is familiar. But, for some people, it's for specific mitzvahs or for specific studies or specific temptations. But when we break that limit, that's really when we achieve the highest level of growth. And I will add just a Kabbalistic aspect to it. But, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria speaks about this quite a bit in the Gates of Reincarnation, Shara Gilgulim, that after all, we are all sent to this world to rectify for that which we did not achieve in a previous life. And most of us today are reincarnations. And some of us have been here multiple times in this world. Now, how can I know what I need to rectify? God doesn't tell me. I don't come down, or I don't come out of my mother's womb with a handbook. So how can I know? And the answer, according to Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, is very powerful. He says, well, the weaknesses that I know I have are the reasons for which I came down to this world. So that which is hard for me to attain is really my mission in this world. And the reason it's hard for me to attain them is because God is not going to make it easy for me. He wants me to prove, indeed, that I can overcome that which I missed in a previous life. So he makes it hard for me. But when I can achieve that which is difficult, that's when I can rectify my wrongdoings in the previous life and fulfill my mission in this world. And everyone is, again, different dispositions. Everyone has different weaknesses. But by recognizing our weaknesses and working on them and going against our nature, that's where we are really fulfilling the reason for which we were created. So it's not just a nice idea here, but it's a very profound one, something that really is at the very foundation of our creation. I think I've mentioned before, but one of the letters of the Lubavitcher Rebbe that really struck me the most was when someone was complaining about his marriage to the Rebbe, apparently, and the Rebbe writes to him, a few tools and methods of how to deal with his issues. And then at the conclusion of the letter, the Rebbe writes to him that you have to remember that God sent you in this world to rectify that which you did not achieve in a previous life. And maybe your department in which you failed in a previous life was Shlom Bayit, was peace in the home. So God is giving you this challenge now to rectify it. So instead of complaining about it, embrace it. And by embracing it, you can fulfill the reason for which you were created. So that's why this passage of the Tanya really is so vital, so fundamental. It's when we go against our nature that we not only grow, but we fulfill, maybe, we don't know, but we fulfill the mission that we need to fulfill to rectify that which we did not achieve in a previous life. Okay. But please, again, I welcome your comments, your disagreements. Otherwise, we can continue, but it shouldn't be a monologue. Okay, let's continue.
Hence, he does not need to concentrate so much on the greatness of God to consciously create a spirit of knowledge and fear of God in his mind in order to guard himself against violation of the prohibitive commandments, or to arouse the love of God in his heart to induce his attachment to him through the fulfillment of the positive commandments and the study of Torah, which balances everything else. For him suffices the hidden love that is in the heart of all Jews who are called the lovers of his name.
Right.
This love is a prerequisite. Without it, why should he, a no-nonsense intellectual, sensorially numb, involve himself with Torah rather than other matters? He does so only because he is a Jew, a lover of his name, with a hidden love of God, an essential bond to him in his Torah. Yet this is not something he feels deeply. It is a little more than a character trait. Because he is a Jew, it is only right that he observes the commandments. And since he is disciplined, he does what is required of him. His immersion within Judaism and tradition defines the directions he takes in life, and his ability to make decisions as well keeps him within the fold as a proper Jew.
Let's touch upon this story here, which is a
Okay.
powerful one too.
The story is told of a scholar who traveled to the famed Rabbi Yaakov Ornstein to receive rabbinical ordination. Rabbi Ornstein's custom was to rely on his son to examine the character of a newcomer. On this occasion, after careful observation, his son recommended against granting ordination to the visitor. His father, however, after speaking with the man and being impressed with his Torah knowledge, decided nonetheless to ordain him. If so, Rabbi Ornstein's son told his father, do it quickly. If he is not soon a rabbi, he will become a priest. The son's impression was that this individual was interested in becoming a rabbi only because, being Jewish, it was his natural proclivity. Yet it was conceivable and could still be conceivable that given his basic nature and potential, he could switch tracks without undue effort.
Right. So this man had a natural tendency to priesthood or maybe some type of spiritual position. So for him, it didn't matter because it was part of his nature. And again, so you could be a rabbi, or you could be any other thing, like he was saying before. But if it's just your nature, then you really have no connection with God, as much as it may seem that way. And only when you go against that nature, then you can really establish a relationship with God. I will say that this is, every morning in our morning prayers, it's interesting because one of the blessings that we say at the very opening of the day is Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam shelo asani goy. That blessed is God for not making me a non-Jew. Now, why are we saying that in a negative? First of all, it's offensive to the non-Jew. And secondly, be positive. You could just say, thank you, God, for making me a Jew. Why are we saying for making me a non-Jew? Thank you for not making me a non-Jew. And the answer is because God made you a non-Jew, but to become a Jew, that demands effort. So your default setting is, okay, you're not Jewish. But to become Jewish, you got to achieve that. Just like this rabbi. Fine, you can have the title rabbi, but you didn't really achieve that title if you don't work on your nature. Otherwise, you might as well be a priest. But it demands effort. And every day we have to prove our connection with God as Jews. How do we do that? Again, by doing something, at least a few things, 4 or 5 things a day that are not necessarily in line with our nature, that go against our nature, but we do them because it's a mitzvah, because it's the way to create a relationship with God. In many ways, as we said, it's not just a way to grow, but it's a way really to rectify that which we may have done wrong in a previous life. So it takes effort to achieve the true level of the Beinoni, and thus a relationship with God. But it's also achievable if we can dedicate ourselves to true growth.